This year, on June 20th, we're going to launch a special edition of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. It'll be a special anthology called The Dad Files. It's 52 very short, very brief discussions of some of the things that I wrote about and the things I learned just being a dad. I found all the old articles that I wrote about Lonnie Beth, from the time that we found out she was coming into the world to the few things that I wrote about in being a grandfather and being able to play with her children. We'll be launching this in small blocks. The whole thing will come out at one time, but they'll be in sections. I think maybe the longest one might be 7 or 8 minutes long, but it would give you a weekly look at some daily dad devotionals, or maybe even just some things that are linked to being a parent, some observations from my life as a young father all the way up to being a grandfather, and invite you, if you're interested in some extra bonus material, check us out when we launch the Dad Files on Father's Day. Should you be interested in sponsoring the Dad Files, you can email me, lonjones, LONJONES, at bellsouth.net, or just send me a message on Facebook. And if you're interested in sponsoring the Dad Files, we'll talk about what that involves. And again, we thank you for keeping up with Jones. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. They are licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee, and they provide services such as mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you need any of these services, contact them 931-433-4660, 931-433-4660. Also, they are in need of heavy equipment operators, concrete finishers, CDL dump truck drivers, and pipe layers. If you're interested in employment with this family-owned business, you can go to the website www.sjnl.com. That's www.sjnl.com. 1.5 horsepower, 110 volt, stainless steel, planetary gearbox. Yep, that's an industrial strength buffer. The buffer and I were companions during my freshman year at Harding University. You see, I was the only guy on the janitorial staff that was strong enough to carry the buffer downstairs in the Bible building and buff the tile hallway in the area where the Bible building offices were. That's the location of the president or the chair of the Bible department, Dr. Jerry Jones. We referred to that area as the Holy of Holies. The only problem was that my work study was in the afternoons. I started classes very early and tried to get out of classes by 2 or 3 o'clock every day and have my afternoons, but being a poor college student, my opportunity to work was in the afternoons. Imagine being in a basement with windows that you can see just enough out that you can see people's feet, and maybe you can see part of the beautiful fall sky, see the leaves falling, and you're down in a dungeon, in a basement, the white tile floor, the white concrete block foundation walls, and you have the monotonous roar of a buffer, and you see the soccer balls go by, and you hear the basketballs dribbling, and you see a frisbee float against the sidewalk and come to rest against this slit of a window that you can only see just a little bit outside of. And you know that college kids are all over the place enjoying the beautiful fall weather at Harding University, and you're in the dungeon and you're running the buffer. I didn't have a Walkman. This was before there were iPads and iPods and earbuds to put in your ears. You're just down here in this dead silent hallway listening to the buffer. And as you stand there wrestling this thing around, You learn that a buffer really kind of works itself. You have the two handles. It's a T-shaped handle, and you've got the control that initiates the spinning of the motor in your right hand. And you lean your right hand down, you raise your left hand up, and the buffer glides to the right. You push your left hand down and raise your right hand up, and the buffer glides to the left. Had I known about the concept, I'd probably thought it was like counter steering on a motorcycle, although it wasn't opposite. You got a direct exchange for the same thing. So you're here on this beautiful fall afternoon, running a 320 RPM, 110 volt motor, 1.5 horsepower buffer, and you're bored out of your mind. They say a idle hand is the devil's workshop. The devil naps on an idle horse. Well, a bored mind is a thing of danger. And I began to notice how the buffer worked and how it responded to the slightest touch. And I drifted back to my skateboarding days. As a middle school student, I had a little skateboard. I had a Makaha shark. I had one of those big yellow skateboards with the flipped up edges, and we would put a custom set of trucks on it and the bigger wheels with the encased bearings. And we didn't do anything cool. We just pavement surfed. We just get on top of a board and go down a hill. If you picked too big a hill, you'd get the speed wobs and the thing would throw you off. If you didn't pick a big enough hill, it was boring and not very entertaining. But I knew how to ride a skateboard. You stand on the board and you lean your toes to the front and you'll turn left, and you lean your heels to the back and you'll turn right. And oh, wow. That's the way this buffer works. I'm standing here holding this buffer, and as I turn the handles or tilt it just a little bit, it glides to the left or glides to the right. And a fellow who can skateboard could stand on this buffer and lean his weight in or out just a little bit. And probably instead of being down here in this isolated dungeon basement, I could be doing something really cool. It'd almost be like levitating. It'd almost be like riding a hovercraft. So I decided to stand the handle up and stand on the front of the buffer and ride the thing. This is probably how Segways got invented. I don't know. So I stand in front of this buffer, and then I realize there's a safety switch. You can't stand in front of a buffer on top of the motor and turn the thing on because of this safety switch that you've got to throw. A 6-inch piece of a coat hanger, a metal coat hanger, broken off, fashioned into a hook, will latch onto the safety switch and pull it in the position that it needs to be in to start the buffer, and you wrap it around the handle, and you've bypassed a safety switch. So now I'm standing on the buffer, 1 foot on one side, 1 foot on the other side of the 110 volt motor, 1.5 horsepower with the stainless steel planetary gearbox. And I'm thinking how proud Wile E. Coyote would be of me at this moment. And then I mashed the handle. The blur of visions, the blur of terror, the absolute utter chaos that occurred when you're standing on top of a buffer and you turn it on cannot be adequately described in a podcast. But nonetheless, I rode the buffer till it had wrapped all of the cord around itself and unplugged it from the wall and sent me crashing into the floor and skidding into the wall itself. You see, when you start a buffer and you're standing on top of it, there's no such thing as a gyroscope. It will not self-correct. It won't allow you to stabilize. It just spins. If you let go of it, it will throw you into the wall, or it will throw you off and spin and beat you to death with its handle. So the only thing you can do is clutch onto it for dear life until it either crashes, runs into the wall, or runs out of cord. And that's what I did. I rode the thing till it had a chaotic ending with me lying sprawled on the floor, tangled up in yellow extension cord. There's a children's song we sing. It's I'm all wrapped up, I'm all tied up, I'm all tangled up in Jesus. probably not the intent of the song, not the chaotic wrapping up and tying up, but it came to my mind. There's a Bible verse where the apostle tells his audience, the love of Christ compels us. And the import of that statement is that if you've never been compelled, and a buffer will compel you. If you stand on the top of that thing and you mash the handle, when it begins to spin, it will compel you to hang on and spin with it, because to let go is to be thrown out. But if you stay inside that vortex, it will spin you in such a tight circle, you will be disoriented forever. If we could get close enough to the center, if we could get close enough to the vortex, that is the love of God. If we wouldn't stand at arm's length, if we wouldn't stand completely away, if we would embrace the faith that it takes to believe in a creator God and a loving Savior, we would be drawn in, not in a chaotic, out of control way, but we'd be drawn into a relationship that says, because of what he's done for me, the love of Christ compels us that, and we judge this, that if one died for all, then all died, and that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but the one who died for them. It's just that simple. Believing in God and accepting the fact that God loved us. You see, a lot of religions talk about serving their God. And yes, as Christians, we're servants of God, but some of the world religions talk about dying for your God, and really Christianity talks about our God being willing to die for us and serving us. He gave us what we need, not what we deserve. When we were in a time of need, he came to rescue us. While we were powerless, he demonstrated his love toward us. And if you'll ever get drawn into that, if you can get through your cynicism, I'm afraid sometimes we're so enlightened, quote unquote, we're so intelligent that we think it's Neanderthal to believe in God. Which is easier, to believe in a supernatural being that has always existed, or to believe that the order of the universe came from absolute chaos? I know some very smart people. I know people with degrees in astrophysics, and people who know quantum theory and string theory, and I'm not a sophisticated person. And so from my unsophisticated viewpoint, it seemed like it's really just a choice between two worldviews. You either have to accept a premise that the material world, that matter has always existed, or you've got to accept the idea that intelligence has always existed. You get to the Big Bang Theory, and even the Big Bang Theory has to have a singularity. You've got to start with something to blow up. You've got to have something to explode. And that's just matter. And so if matter has always existed, then the minds that are listening to this podcast came from matter. Or you must accept that an intelligence has always existed, and that the matter of the universe, the rocks and the trees and the water and the elements and the stars and the planets and the minds listening to this podcast came from an intelligence. And I really do think it's that simple. You either have to believe in matter, or you always have to believe that there was a mind. And once we can suspend our human wisdom and our sophistication and our reluctance to believe in the supernatural, and just accept the fact that there's some things about the natural world that declare there has to have a supernatural origin. And then we realize that that Creator formed us in His image and seeks a relationship with us to the point that He put into existence the plan to redeem us when we demonstrated our capacity to be imperfect, and to love us, and to die for us, and to forgive us, and to ransom us, and redeem us. Once we understand that, once we really get that, then truly the love of Christ compels us. And we are drawn into that vortex of love. And we do get all wrapped up, all tied up, all tangled up in that love. And understanding that when you get a hold of that and you allow it to take hold of your heart, then you must know that the only way to lose that, the only way to be thrown free of it, is to let go. And trust me, a God that will do that for us initially, when we were without power and when we were without hope and while we were still sinners, a God that will do that initially, if you won't let go of Him, He will never let go of you. There are 32 miles of cave passages in Cumberland Cavern. 333 feet underground is the Volcano Room. The Volcano Room is the site for the youth rally known as Erupt. It's an underground youth rally. It's an annual event. It takes place in October. The next Erupt is scheduled for October of 2021. Erupt is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. If you'd like more information, you may contact them at eruptyouthRally@gmail.com. That's eruptyouthRally@gmail.com. Or check out their website for more information, 3 W's and a dot, eruptyouthRally.com, www.eruptyouthRally.com.